our lovely Emilie is finally back. It has been very much a while since Emilie was last available. Now, I know that some of you may have actually go ahead and pull her, so I think it's pretty much a time where we have a bit of an updated guide for Emilie, because ever since she was released there has been some new content that she can't have access to, especially when it comes to team building. So basically we're going to be discussing everything about Emilie in today's video. Mavuika is going to be coming back soon, and I know that many of you are excited for her. So if you're planning to swipe for pooling, then don't forget to check out Loot Bar. If you know me, I've been recommending you guys Loot Bar before, since you can always save almost a 25% on all of your top-ups. With over 100,000 orders and so many good reviews at this point. And by the way, this also applies to PS5 and Xbox user who can place orders through Loot Bar. You can be sure that Loot Bar is trustworthy. Here you can see my order receipts of all of my top-ups that I have done. And for those who are going for the highest package when topping up, there's also a limited discount options available once every version. So guys, be sure to check out Loot Bar through the link in my description, as it can be a great way for you to save your money, especially if you are topping up a large amount. Now for Emilie's basic skills and kit, I don't think I really have to go through a lot, because whatever she does is actually so simple. As basically Emilie kit is built for burning reactions, amplifying her off-field dendro damage when enemies are basically in burning reactions, making her a pretty unique sub DPS, which of course she is. There aren't pretty much many characters that is specialized in burning reactions apart from her. The skill summon kind of like a little bit of slam for persistent dendro off-field damage, and technically have 100% uptime, which really short cooldown. She also grants your whole team basically an 85% pyro resistant buff against burning, so yeah, you don't really have to worry too much about burning, taking out your team member whenever we're in the team. And then her elemental burst is basically pretty simple, just basically casting it and deal a bit of AoE damage to your surrounding enemies. So overall, she's honestly not too hard to understand. Now overall, it's very easy to use Emilie, but the downside of her is obviously that she is required for you guys to be using in a burning reaction team, which is why she hasn't been all that popular ever since. Now obviously I've been saying that I really do like Emilie because she has a lot of potential, especially, you know, when it comes to power level, she is really good. But with the sheer fact of how limited top tier team that actually specialize in burning reactions, honestly we don't really have too many characters, which is why her usage case is actually rather limited as well. However, her team building is honestly rather diverse, which is where we're going to be touching in a little bit. But overall, this is an Emilie kind of guide, so I'm pretty sure if you guys are watching this video, you guys should have an Emilie on your team already. More into her specific build. When it comes to her best weapon, obviously her Lumidel's Elegy signature is always going to be the best, basically providing all of the stats that Emilie actually requires. After that is going to be the Calamity Queller if you do have access to it. While yeah, you have a Shenha, you have been using Calamity Queller for a bit of time, that's something that we can use for Emilie. After that it's going to be the Staff of Homa as well as the Staff of Scarlet Sands. Those two are also rather limited and can be a bit rare. If you do have access to them, they are also rather nice. Deathmatch is also a decent option, especially if you have it at an R5 level, you can use that really well. And after that, other 5-star options, your Jade Spear, Scout Spine, those kind of 5-star options isn't actually too good, unless if Jade Spear she's being used as an on-field DPS gameplay, then yes, we can actually go for that. When it comes to more or less free-to-play weapons, we have like the Massive Wind Spear, some other usable 4-star options that is rather new after Emilie was released. It's like the Ohanashi, really nice 4-star if you do have access to a shield. So if you are using Emilie in maybe some kind of team that has access to a shield, then you can use this weapon on her. Mountain Bracing Bolt is an okay poem as well, because it does give her energy recharge stats as well as E skill damage increase. So overall it is rather decent on her. Other than that, you know, like the Favonius Lance is okay, but that is actually more or less focused on energy regen, so it's actually tanking her DPS level quite a bit, which is why when it comes to it, at least the deathmatch for the 4-star or the Missive Wind Spear is the options that we want to consider. Artifact wise, the Unfinished Reverie is basically her best set, grants her a permanent damage boost, and it can even outperform the 4-piece Deep Wood set as well. Now, that being said, the Deep Wood memory set is still a very decent one, especially when you don't have another Dendro unit to be holding this set for a bit of Dendro resistance shred, and also we've been farming for the Deep Wood memories for I think a pretty long time, so I'm pretty sure you guys must have access to this. So technically, I just recommend you guys to go ahead and go for this 2 set because the 4-piece is actually giving her a really nice boost. 2-piece set is also okay when it comes to Dendro damage and attack increase. You look something like those, but honestly, just try to go for the 4-piece set. It's honestly quite a lot better. Artifact stats priority, basically attack percentage stance, Dendro damage bonus goblet, and a crit ratio circlet is generally something you want to go for. A bit of energy regen requirement is something that you may want to consider at times because her elemental burst does help her do decent damage, but then her burst does have around a 70 energy cost, which is actually quite high. So generally, it's not always a recommendation that you should always try and go for burst every rotation. So generally around 140%, if you can get her to roughly around that, is an okay for if Emilie is just a single Dendro character on the team, or you don't need to have her burst every rotation. However, if you do want to have a burst every rotation, then 170% is technically the minimum requirement that you want to go for it, but as you can see, it is actually quite a lot for her. For Constellation, I would say many of you are going to be investing into it, but we're just going to quickly go through it so that you have an idea. C1 is actually a pretty strong damage boost for her and faster sanity regeneration as well, and overall kind of like a good stopping point if you want to have a bit of more damaging power toward Emilie herself. However, if you are a burning team maniac, you want to have a lot more investment toward your specific Dendro character than a C2 with a 30% Dendro resistance shred. Yeah, I think it's a really good place for you to generally stop, as it is a pretty powerful constellations, especially when you have other DPS Dendro character, you know, like having Kinnish on your team. C2 is generally really fine. C4 extends the burst uptime, a little bit of a niche due to burst having a bit more situational use, but overall it is kind of like a slight damage increase. And then C6 is obviously again really good as it actually transforms Emilie into an on-field DPS character. Again, it is a very high investment, but wow, it is for those of you who are wills. Now moving on to team comps building is where it get interesting for Emilie. As we know, burning is something that Emilie kind of needs. If your team don't have extra pyro character at the very least, so that she has access to burning reactions to enhance her skill level, then honestly it is sapping out a lot of potential on your Emilie. So whatever you are doing with your team building, at least one other pyro character is needed on her team, which is where I have mentioned earlier, her team is actually a little bit more diverse than we may think. As generally speaking, the remaining 2 characters in her team can technically be a flex, even though sometimes they will not be able to keep the burning reaction uptime for, you know, around 100% of the time, but it does allow you to build a lot of different teams. So when it comes to a specific burning team, there are a bit of new content when it comes to it, but the team that we have been using before has always been, you know, character like Emilie, Kinnish, Xiangling, and a Bennett. However, when there was the introduction of Mavuika is an absolutely amazing character, especially on this team where Kinnish and Mavuika works together really well. Then you have Mavuika and Xiangling plays, and it's absolutely a fantastic team. Now obviously we can go ahead and try to have some other pyro character being the main pyro DPS in the burning team, especially for example we have like Alekino can be alongside with Emilie in her burning reaction team, where the remaining character can be like Bennett and Nahida. I think this is a fine team. I've been using it in the new endgame content, and honestly the team has actually been able to help me clear the content, so overall it's actually not too bad. bad. Another very interesting team that we can find Emilie being used in is that the other two flex character can actually be Geo characters, you know, like having character like Zhongli, Shilonen, for example. So while if you want to play around with, you know, for example, Mavuika, you have a Shilonen and then you have a Zhongli, I think that's an interesting team for us to actually go ahead and try out. If you have a good sub DPS character like Emilie and you don't really have any other good sub DPS character to be slotting in, I think this is a pretty fine team that we can actually go ahead and try out. And then expanding to a bit of the other team comp potential, we have access to Burn Melt and Burn Vape. Though yes, it is rather uncommon, but while she definitely works on these kind of teams. So for example, Burn Melt, we can actually have, you know, character like Risley, Emilie, Mavuika, and a Bennett. That is a really powerful updated teams that we can look into considerations. Burn Vape is a little bit more common because the Hydro character we have access to are rather a bit unique. For example, you know, like even Mulani can be on Emilie team. We have Emilie, Mulani, Mavuika, and Zhongli, for example. That's a decent team for Mulani. Now there's another interesting team that we can consider when it comes to Burn Vape, where Emilie, Furina, Bennett, and a Mavuika is a decent team comp for us to look into, where this time around Emilie can actually be on the on-field character, be in Bennett's circle if he is at C6, have the Jade Spear on, and then do, you know, a bit of normal attack here and there so that she can keep the burning reaction actively going. Overall, that's a very decent team. Now if you want to have her in a Neuvillette team, for example, then Neuvillette, Emilie, Mavuika, and Furina is something that you can consider. However, this team is slightly going to be hard for us to keep the burning reaction going, so it's not really too popular compared to the other kind of Burn Vape team. Other than that, Quick Burn team is also a variant that we can look into, where of course you have like running electro characters, where obviously one of the more better team is going to be Cloran, Emilie, Mavuika, and you know, a Fischl, for example. You guys can consider that, or technically speaking, any of the electro DPS character can work and try to be on this kind of team. Even though it's not too popular, it does actually work, so generally it's not too bad of a team comps for you to look into. So those guys are some of the team comps I would say that Emilie have access to, and some of the better team comps that we're looking into. Obviously, as I've mentioned, there are a lot of more variants that you guys can play around with, because again, the last two slots are very much flexible on her team. So basically, you guys can look around into that. So with everything that we've just discussed about Emilie, here's a bit of an overall review again from what I've been seeing with Emilie's, right? Overall, she has really nice sub DPS power, really easy to use. You can technically slot her in many of the different teams and she will work as long as you have burning reaction available, because while the downside is obviously again her damage drops to roughly 30 to 50% without proper burning. So yes, pairing her always with character like Mavuika, Xiangling is generally going to be a needed. Other than that, she technically doesn't offer any team-wide buff, unlike, you know, character like Nahida, where you have access to EM share where it comes to a bit of Dendro sub DPS with Nahida, and then supportive power. So whenever you're having Emilie on the team, other supportive characters are generally recommended to have the overall buff for your team going. Passivity energy burst needs roughly around 130% to 150% energy regen without her signature. So if you are struggling, you want burst every rotation, then Favonius Lance is generally recommended. Her E skill, the Luminous Case, is generally a single target focus. So heavy AoE characters that can group enemies together, for example your Sucrose and Kazuha for grouping, is something that you guys can consider if you want to have a better result when it comes to group enemy situation with using Emilie's skill. So yes, at the current point, she might not be too popular. However, we honestly don't know what there is going to be whenever patch 6.0 actually comes, where, you know, not cry, maybe later on we have more really nice pyro character that can be used more in burning reaction teams and they can do really well. So I think that's everything we have to say about Emilie on today's video. I hope that the video has been helpful to you guys. If you do have any question, leave it down in the comment section and I or some other lovely Genshin player will get to you there. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to not miss out on my future Genshin videos. With that, I wish you a super day and I'll catch you on my next video.